Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Friday morning, progressives, and welcome to the February 28th, 2025 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. That's where you can find us. Hey, guys. Email me at richard@wcpt820.com and catch me on Substack. I post some articles every other week. We're getting better at it. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. There you can get Choose Views, the long versions and the short versions. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Out Chicago, and other shows and interviews. Check out our digital signal platform, that being heartlandsignal.com. Because why? As we always say, we have to remind you, there's good stuff there. Big, beautiful day today. We are, what we'll call this day is the blackout, economic blackout day. If you have to buy some things, make them your necessities. And if not, try to do your best to have what you need already so that you can show your force. You can let the big corporations and some of the small ones that are doing not the best of things know where you stand. It's a twofold item, and we will talk about that throughout the course of the day today. Because one, it sends a message to these big companies that are bending the knee or have bent the knee to the administration. They have no reason. They have excuses. And some, I understand, are trying to make it a play about their company's performance and their stock and all these things. However, at the end of the day, if they're bending the knee to this 34-time convicted felon, 34XCF, as we call him, and a few others, then they've got to have a little bit of pinch in the backside, as I like to say. The other side of that coin, if you will, is the ability for you to know that on this day you took a stand. And you take stands on other days, so don't get me wrong. I understand that you guys are plugged in. I understand that progressives are plugged in. You folks are plugged in. And to that end, as a good citizen, a good progressive, good folks, good people, you good people, you good progressives, you folks, you good citizens, not only get to take a stand, however, you also get to feel good about the fact that you did it. So there you go. Today's going to be a cool day. We've got Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics Podcast that's going to be hanging out with us here this morning. So we're looking forward to that. And then at 7 o'clock, in the 7 o'clock hour, we have State Representative Cam Buckner, who will be with us, as well as in the 7:30 hour, State Representative Harry Benton will be with us. So we're going to be busy this morning. And during the 6:30 hour, the lines are open now. So we'll be taking your calls, and we'll be taking your calls as best possible through the course of the show, even with our representatives that will be calling in. So don't be bashful. Give us a shout. And most certainly send us a text message. I love to get the text messages from you. Can't always read every single one of them. However, I do try to get to them at some point during each show. So send them. And also, make sure you email me. Your emails are great. I read them all. I don't respond to all of them. Some of them are a little out there, but still send them. I still read them. And some of them are very helpful to the show. There are things that people have sent to me that we actually have referenced. And in some cases, we will play if someone sends me a clip. So just letting you know, let us know that you've got something to say, and we will do our best to make that part of our show and our programming. So there you go. Now, here's a phrase that I'm going to use, and we're going to hit some Choose Views news, and Henry's got to roller skate it around the place. We'll talk about some things to do in Chicago this weekend. But this is a phrase that I'm going to throw out to you wonderful progressives, to you good folks, to you citizens. And that's this. Let's go take their lunch. Let's go take their districts. What do I mean by that? We need to encourage our progressive leaders across the board to hold town halls in Republican districts. There's nothing that says you can't do that. No rules, no laws. There might be this unwritten decorum that you don't go into, but that's a bunch of BS. That's the old way of playing the game, Henry. They've got some new players on their team that are playing differently, so we need to play differently with our new players. Because what? All of our players means all of our players. So we have to play this game differently. And I am of the mindset that any progressive, liberal, democratic elected official or one that's looking to be elected in any community on any level needs to start to go into Republican districts, even if you're in a blue state, and go snatch their lunch. Why? Because it makes sense. Not only do we want all of our players, we want all of our people to be part of this process, all of our folks, all of our progressives to be a part of this fight. So that means you have to, as an elected official and one that is looking to get elected, you've got to go into some foreign territory. You have to make absolutely certain that you go into areas where you may not have normally thought to go and may not have thought you'd be welcome. It doesn't matter anymore. At this point, what matters is going in and bringing a message. And see, let me make it the point this way as well. It's not just going in, Henry, to be reckless and all that. That's not the point. The point is to go in to bring the message to the people in those communities. And I don't care if 15 people show up or 1,500 people show up. You hold a town hall in a community that they're not expecting, and I'll promise you this, people are going to start to show up. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why I believe that to be true. In this environment, we can't hope that there are Republicans who voted for this current administration on a federal level and the House and the Senate that they voted for. We can't hope that they are going to see a better way. We can't hope that they will. Hope's not a strategy. However, if they see that you show up in their community, some of those people are going to be like, what is he or she doing here? And some of those people, Henry, are going to be, where you been? I promise you that there are people that are going to be in those other districts that are going to say, where you been? It's about doggone time. We're tired of hearing the same garbage from these same people, but you're not giving us somebody to vote for. Else other than the person that's, consistently the retread in a red district. So what I'm saying is get into those districts, progressive liberal Democrats, and let the folks know that you do care and you do have a message that's better, that our ideas are better. And you're going to get pushback, and you should. But if you're strong, you've got a message for that pushback because our ideas are better. If you go into a heavily red district and there's a lot of people there that are firmly against abortion, great. That's your right. But don't make it so that somebody else can't have the ability to exercise their right. If you don't like brown people, look at your history. You might find some brown-skinnedness in your background. I mean, if you don't like the LGBTQ community, look in your history. You might find somebody that's been a member of the LGBTQ community, which is part of our country. Let me remind you. So, and I will continue on this topic because that's what I wrote in my notes. Let's go take their lunch. Come on, Dems. Time to fight a little bit differently. And we, as the community of voters, have to encourage our leaders to do this. Now is the time. Pull a bus up into a place where you can have a good town hall and people can go, wow, they finally showed up. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Let's hit some quick views news, Henry, before we go to this break. All right. The U.S. is slapping a new 10% tariff on China, citing a failure to stem the drug trade. Donald Trump has said an extra tariff on China and new tariffs for Mexico and Canada would take effect next Tuesday. In a post yesterday, Trump said the administration would slap an additional 10% levy on imports from China, specifically because it hadn't done enough to block the trade in fentanyl. There's no trade in fentanyl, first of all, dumb A. There's no trade in it. Okay. That levy comes on top of a 10% tariff announced weeks ago for the country. A tariff of 25% each would apply to America's neighbors. Dumb. Stocks have been on a tumble, a bouncing around, up and down. A sell-off in large technology stocks intensified yesterday as investors grew increasingly concerned about the potential impact of the latest tariff threats. All three major stock indexes declined, with the NASDAQ recording the sharpest drop. Shares in AI chip-making powerhouse NVIDIA tumbled more than 8%, despite its earnings beating expectations. One analyst noted that the results coincide with an extremely jittery time in the markets. You think all the big boys on Wall Street who got behind 34-time convicted felon, there you go. Google cuts jobs in the cloud and some of its HR units. Google is cutting jobs in several of its sectors as of yesterday, with layoffs and buyout offers hitting the company's cloud division as well as its ad sales and human resources departments. According to documents viewed by CNBC and other outlets, per a Google spokesperson quoted in Business Insider, the layoffs affected fewer than 200 roles overall, while Bloomberg reported that the cloud division cuts numbered less than 100. Employees at Google's platforms and devices unit were offered buyouts as well. And Stanford University implements a hiring freeze, the latest university to institute a hiring freeze as uncertainties persist around federal policy changes, particularly proposed cuts to direct federal funding for scientific research through the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Columbia, Northwestern, and other schools have made similar moves, even though a legal challenge blocked the NIH cuts for now. The American Council on Education says the cuts would cost jobs and stifle innovation and global competition. I got so much to say about that, but I'll stay on point for now. And last but not least, Target to add Warby Parker. In an effort to boost foot traffic and reach new customers and consumers, Target is ramping up its Shop in Shops initiative, announcing plans to add 5 Warby Parker eyewear locations. The shops, staffed by Warby Parker employees, will open in the second half of this year, and more locations will debut in 2026. The partnership comes as Target works to revive its sales growth and Warby Parker branches out to large retailers. All right, so there you go. A couple of Choose Views news this morning. All right, progressives, we're going to take a quick break, and you guys sit tight. We'll be right back. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. We'll grab some of your calls, and we'll keep it moving. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Let's talk about some things to do in Chicago this weekend. If you're in the Chicago area, this weekend of February 28th through March 2nd, 2025. A pressing call, 500 years of women in printing. A pressing call, 5 centuries of women printing features and the stories for women who have worked in the print trade in a variety of different roles. That's going to be at the Special Collections Research Center Exhibition Gallery, 1100 East 57th Street. So that's down in the University of Chicago, Hyde Park area. Make your way there. If you want to get out and check out some soccer or football, Chicago Fire FC will be playing against the DC United. That's taking place tomorrow at Soldier Field, 1400 Special Olympics Drive here in Chicago. So you can make your way over there if you feel like kicking it around. Ha, ha, ha. Wicker Park has got Bucktown's First Fridays Art Walk. First Fridays Art Walk, organized by the Wicker Park Bucktown Chamber of Commerce, welcomes art enthusiasts to explore the neighborhoods and the vibrant art scene. That is at the Jackson Junge Gallery at 1389 North Milwaukee Avenue here in Chicago. So if you're in town, want to do something different, that's a place to go. The Bulls are playing Toronto The Raptors are playing at the United Center tomorrow. No, that's tonight. Okay, tonight. And that's, of course, at 1901 West Madison Street. You can check out the Bulls there. I'm keeping you guys active with things to do that are active things. And that's the Monster Jam. Come on, Henry. Let's roll up to the Monster Jam. We pull up in the parking lot with our big monster truck. It's like Henry and I have monster trucks. Experience Monster Jam live and become a fan for life with awesome trucks, amazing stunts, amazing action-packed excitement, and, of course, the big air that goes on in that event. Allstate Arena today, 6920 Manheim Road. So make your way out there if you're looking for something a little bit different to do in the activity space. And then, still going on, the Spring Flower Show at Garfield Park. Mystery, rooted in mystery, explores the critical parts of plants that we don't usually see. The roots of the plants. And that's going to be at the Garfield Park Conservatory, 300 North Central Park Avenue. Make your way over there. And the last couple of things up in Andersonville, still going on, is Andersonville Restaurant Week. Chamber of Commerce sponsored by that Chamber of Commerce in Andersonville. Still happening till Sunday. 1554 West Hollywood is where you can go to check out what's happening with Andersonville's Restaurant Week. And last but not least, if you want to make your way out to see a ballet, join Ballet 5-8. That is the Struggle and Resilience performance at the Caron Center for the Arts, 5628 West Washington Boulevard. So make your way over there. Lots of things to do in Chicago this weekend. Hit me back if you want to know a little bit more. We can send you some of our items. What I have to tell you again is let's go take their lunch. Let's go take their stuff, Henry. Let's let the folks know in Republican districts, the elected officials from Republican districts know that if you don't want to show up for a town hall to the people that you serve, okay, we're going to roll in. In fact, Henry and I are going to drive up in a monster truck with some big, loud, exhaust pipes. Maybe that'll get their attention as we're muddling down the road to get to the event, the location. But I'm serious, guys, and I mean that in the most practical way, but also in the way that's going to be highly, I believe, effective. Because it's working. Let me back up a second and tell you where this came from. It's working that our representatives, and when I say our representatives are hearing the message from us, and they're acting on it in many ways. Not everybody. We want to see more. I said it should be daily press conferences, minimally Friday and Mondays. I mean that. However, the people that are showing up at some of these town halls, Henry, are very upset. And we've played a couple of the clips, and you guys have seen some on your own. They're upset. And I think the one that we played earlier in the week from Representative McCormick, who is somewhat talking down to the people that were at the event by saying, I don't have to be here if you're not going to listen, if you're going to just yell. I'm like, dude, just take the hits, man. Just listen, take the hits. However, what showed up, Henry, what's been great, too, and please, guys, understand where I come from in this. The women that are stepping up, and in these districts, it's been mostly white women that are saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not what we voted. Or the part that I go a little bit back and forth on is, well, if you didn't vote for that, what were you paying attention to? Because we did tell you. We didn't try to tell you. Someone corrected me last week at the McHenry County Democratic Women's event. I said, we tried. She said, no, Richard, we didn't try. It was great. She waved her finger right in my face. She said, no, Richard, we didn't try. We told them. And I was like, you're right. I'm going to change my vocabulary there. When someone suggests things like that, I stop and go, okay, they're making a little bit more sense. We didn't try to tell you. We told you vociferously that this was a bad beat repeatedly. And we didn't tell you just from the point in which Joe Biden stepped aside and Vice President Harris stepped forward. We've been telling you this since before he announced that he was going to run. And then when he announced, we really leaned into it. So there's a part of me that goes, it's great that you're showing up and yelling and screaming on good topics that are important to not just you as an individual, but your neighbors. But we told you this was going to happen. There's a thing called Project 2025 that if nobody, Karen and I spent last spring, late winter, last spring, through the summer, through the fall, taking Friday mornings to talk about it and asking people, begging people to pass that along, if nothing else. And yeah, I know it was a big 900-plus page document. Whatever. Read 5 pages a night, and in a certain period of time, you got it covered. That's just how I look at it. But that being said, I'm glad that people are showing up at these events, and it's working. Because so you may not know this, Henry, maybe you do, that some of the Republican leadership, if you want to call it that, some of the Republicans, I'm just going to put it that way, because it's not leading, they're following. Some of the Republican followers, let's change it to that. Let's make that a national thing, guys. Somebody come up with what's it called? Not just a meme and a hashtag. Republican followers, they're not Republican leaders. That being said, many of them who have gone to town halls, Henry, they've gotten heat. So it's working because the Republican followers have said, thank you, Henry. He looked at me like, don't you dare say leaders. The Republican followers have been telling other House members, hey, don't go. Don't go. Now, why would you do that? If you are a leader, you would tell them go and be ready and stand up for, and if nothing else, defend it. See, they can't. Henry's like, come on, Richard, get to it. They can't defend these positions. That's why they won't go. And when they get there, they're afraid of taking the heat because they can't defend the positions. They are deflecting to say, well, Biden did whenever. And here's what's interesting, Henry, in those clips that we played and that are out there, whenever the folks that are at these town halls have said to the Republican elected individual that's there, their representative, and they asked them why. Why are you standing behind this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Vote in terms of your vote. Better than 50% of the time, actually better than 70% of the time, they are deflecting to this is Biden's fault. Something that Biden did. Something that the Dems did. No, if this is what you believe, then just say, yeah, I voted for it. And say, because I think it's better. But they won't do that, which tells you why the Republican followers are telling their other members of their caucus to not go, because they know they can't defend it. So I think the label followers is appropriate. Let's do something that we don't do often. Well, let's see. We'll keep, because we got a break, and then we'll come back and we'll grab a couple calls, because I know that she's going to want to chat for a bit. But that being said, let's go take their lunch, guys. Democratic leaders go into Republican districts and start doing it now, so that the Republican that got elected in maybe your neighboring district, you can help a person who's actually going to run in that district. They know how this works. They know how this game is played. And I want to see Democratic officials, Democratic leaders on a federal level do a different job. There's a number of Senate seats. People keep saying, well, the Senate's not in play. The Senate's not in play. It's always in play. How dare us as progressive liberal Democrats say it's not in play? It's not a good political map. It's always a good political map. If your message is stronger, and I recognize if people are in a deeply red district or a deeply red state, but that it's always in play. And I'll use a sports analogy before we go to this break. Just because a team that you're going up against has this great winning record, they're, football, they're 13-0, and you are 6-6. Why not become 7-6 and make them 13-1? And the Super Bowl proved that. Everybody was talking about the vaunted Kansas City Chiefs, and they were pretty good. When they got really put to the test, it wasn't even a contest. So that's what I want the Democratic mindset to be. Come on, guys. Doesn't matter that it's a whatever population or district or state. Let's go take their stuff. And it takes leadership to have that kind of mindset, I believe. All districts and all states are in play. With that, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, today and welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Today, live, local, and progressive, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls for the first half of the show, then talking to Casey Harrison, political correspondent at the Nevadian, and North Central College political science professor Suzanne Schott. Live, local, and progressive. Weekdays, 2 to 5, here on WCPT, AM 820, Heartland Signal, website, and tune in. And then tonight, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Sam Barloga, Communications Director for the Indiana Democratic Party. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays, 5 to 7 p.m. here on WCPT, AM 820, Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Next week, here on Choose Views, my guests will include Marcia Levick of the Juvenile Law Center, Democratic strategist Mike Nellis, immigration attorney Kate Lincoln Goldfinch, and yes, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, and many more. So we look forward to having them with us. And of course, we will keep you posted there. Right now, as you guys know, make your way over to our HeartlandSignal.com and click on my picture, because when you do that, you will get the Choose Views featured interviews, podcast, and all the rest. So make your way over there. And if you're listening live here, obviously, you can catch us on the AM dial, WCPT's Facebook or YouTube pages, HeartlandSignal.com. Show page, of course, like I said, click on my face, go to HeartlandSignal.com. And, of course, if you haven't already, you can follow Heartland Signal on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at the Heartland Signal, one word. That's where you can go. All right, guys. Make sure also you're staying tuned for my radio sister on the West Coast. That would be none other than Stephanie Miller and Tom Hartman, the professor of everything progressive. So you know how it goes. Let's grab a quick call from our good friend, Pam. Good morning, Pam, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Richard. First, let me say, Richard, I love Summer Madness. It is one of the, to me, most beautiful songs, and the musicianship in that song, for me, is breathtaking. I love it. Always have.
We've got to give a shout-out to Henry for that as well, because he's the man that makes sure that happens when we do that music.
Right on, Henry.
That's
right on. Okay, because it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I want to ask you a question, but I'm going to leave that towards the end. I want to respond to what you're saying. Richard, all that you're saying is true, but here's my concern. There is a racial divide within the Democratic Party. And we know that the majority of black people voted for Harris, and the majority of white women and white men didn't, and that could be split Republican and Democratic. Here, I'm going to give this sports analogy. You have your defense and your offense, and then in football you have your special teams. I get it that we always want to go on offense with facts and then plain language. I mean, speak plain language and just forgo the big words. So that's your offense, reaching out to everybody. But here's where the defense comes in, Richard. You're not protecting your home court, your home court advantage, which are the black peoples within the Democratic Party. Richard, when you have Greg Palast telling us that almost 4 million people were purged, black voters purged off the rolls, that right there is your margin of victory over this insurrectionist Hitler lover.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about the voters who are purged from these rolls via voter suppression, challenges by the army of haters that Elon Musk hired, and these so-called provisional ballots that don't mean a hill of beans? So the Democratic Party and Harris did all that she could to reach out to Republican voters, even saying that she was willing, as many Democratic, elected people do, have Republicans in their cabinet. Richard, I don't know the message that's going to come across to those, because they didn't even deal with facts when they looked at why they supported Trump. Now we have a massive redistribution of wealth going to the wealthiest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you comment on that. And then my question is, Richard, you're a business person. Mm-hmm. What is the role of business people to speak out against what is going on? Because I think if you're a decent business person, I understand you want to stay in business, you want revenue, and you want to make your business grow. But we need our business community and our wealthiest people, and I'm talking wealthy black people, Asian, Jewish, whatever. We need more of them to speak out. This just can't be a fight for the poor, working class, and middle class. It just cannot be that way. So what do you want to see come from the business community?
Well, I haven't.
In addition.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I'm sorry. In addition to just trying to, I guess, talk about the fairness of it.
So two broad points. No, that's okay. I didn't want to interrupt you.
And Richard, I'll hang up because I know, you're on a schedule, but I'll hang up and listen if that's okay. That's
up to you, Pam. I'll respond to the first part, and because you said what is truth about the amount of voter purging and suppression that took place, not just in this past election, but has been taking place in other elections along the way. It is a massive problem, and I'm going to be humbly honest here. I don't know what the single solution, if there is a single solution to it. However, I will submit this. I know for a fact that bringing awareness to it, which is what Greg Palast is doing, is critically a critical part of this. So that's one of the reasons that I try to have him on the show as much as we can and talk with him and stay plugged into what he puts out on social media. You guys should follow him, particularly on Blue Sky. He puts a lot of content out. So we have to get the word out continue to get the word out about voter suppression. I talked with a gentleman earlier this week and last week that we had on the show that spoke to that as well. And when we talked just yesterday, let me grab my notes here. Sorry about this. When we talked yesterday with Defend the Vote Executive Director Brian Lemech, he spoke to that in terms of the amount of suppression that's taking place in ways that we don't really pay attention to. So my single response to this, Pam, is we have to keep driving the narrative. We have to keep talking about it. And maybe I have to do a better job or an increased job of talking about it. But this is what I will submit to all of you progressive, wonderful folks that are out there. I will do a better job of talking about it, have conversations about it, and bringing in people who understand that it's happening and that there can be solutions. And so I will make an effort, a much more concerted effort to speak in that space. On your second point about as a business owner, what do I want to see? I've said before, I've said this in private conversations. I've said this, and people that, that I talk to in private know that I've said this. And I said this to some extent on the air. More business owners that are progressives need to step up. And I say more, that's not to say that there aren't ones that do. But I've said that if we were to assemble our war chest of people and present that to the country as visually as we can and show that we have, because what's one thing to have the one-offs every now and again. Well, we got this person visuals are important. And I think that if Ken Martin is going to do one thing, one of the many things that he's going to need to do as a new DNC chair, he has to assemble the business people, men and women of all communities, like you just said, to show we are diverse in our everyday folk, our middle income and lower income folk, as well as our big business leaders. And I'm talking from all communities. I believe, Pam, there is a strong message and opportunity to start to show that now, because a lot of people who support businesses want to support the small, medium, and large businesses that are run properly and that stand on business that are progressives. But if they don't know who they are, then it's hard to do that. So I'm of the mindset, if I were in Ken Martin's ear, and believe me, we're trying real hard to get him on the show, I would tell him, look, man, Ken, you got to do this. This is part of what you have to do. You've got to get them to speak out, because then Americans will see the pushback from other business leaders of all communities. So there you go, Pam. You stayed with me while I answered your question, too.
I did, because, Richard, I very much appreciate that. And then all that I ask, at some point, the Democratic Party is going to have to say Harris was right. Yeah. It was right to fight for the freedoms of women. Women and girls are still being raped and forced to have babies by their rapists. That is still going on, even though they don't want to have that discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, the issues that we were right on, the Democratic Party has to stand firm on that. But I'm just saying they're purging black voters and Latino voters now and Asian voters. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time before they start doing it to white voters.
That's what we've been trying to tell people for the longest time. The monsters are in the closet, under the bed. Now they're in the sheets with you. And that's what this voter suppression around the SAVE Act is all about. It's about ultimately suppressing women, specifically white women voters. And so, yes, all the above, Pam, all the above.
Thank you.
I want to answer your questions while you're on as best I can. And thank you for your contribution this morning. We appreciate it.
Okay, take care. And boycott. Viva la boycott. Yay.
Right on, Pam.
All right.
Thanks, dear. Have a great day.
Okay.
Listen, y'all, I mean, Pam brings the message. She's not at all shy about speaking what's on her mind because she's been around for a minute. She's fought many, many battles, like our good friend and listener, Azalee. They've been around. I mean, I'm going to talk about Pam's age because I don't know it, and that's none of my business. However, they've been around. They've been in this fight for a long time, guys. They're pushing hard to make these changes. So I believe strongly that what Pam is saying is right. When it comes to voter suppression, we have to do more to talk about it. It has to be out there. Let people know that it's happening, where it's happening, and how. So, again, I go back and say, follow Greg Pallas. Greg is a great, great resource in that space. And some who don't follow him on social, just Google him and get some of the material that he's produced. It will certainly enlighten you, I believe. And Brian Lamech, who we had on yesterday, who talks about this in terms of the work that he's doing, in terms of defending the vote. Two people that we can get behind and help them get their message out by spreading the word. So just want to say that to you guys. Now, again, I want to remind you that today is Blackout Day, and do your best to redirect, alter, if not cease some of your corporate purchases. Support that local business as best you can. If there's a coffee shop that you go to that coffee shop. Maybe buy a little extra. Do what you got to do. If there's a local grocery store that you maybe haven't gone to, give them a shot. And other businesses in your community. Your voice can be heard by simple things such as that. And people say boycotts don't work, Richard. People that tell you something doesn't work or you can't do it typically are ones that haven't tried it, don't know anything about it, or want to detract you and deter you from doing something that they actually know does work. Do you ever think about it that way? A lot of times when people say that, and that's why I said what I said earlier about the districts and the states. We have to go to the districts that are right close by us that have been red to work on flipping them red, because the Republican followers' message is not a broad message. It's been a succinct message. I will give them their credit there, but it has not been a broad message to all the people in their district. And the proof in the pudding is, I believe, that the people who have shown up at these town halls either didn't get the message and voted incorrectly, or they thought the message was different. Either way, the end result has not been to their benefit and will not be to their benefit. So at this point, we have to encourage our Democratic leaders to go into red areas and start to pull some of those voters. I believe we can do it. Some of you may think I'm crazy and that it's a waste of resources. It's a two-pronged attack. I think the first prong, the first benefit of going into those districts, is that we will pull the people who did not vote. Many of the people that are in red districts and blue districts that did not vote are the ones we want to go after. And it's a two-pronged attack. I'm not blind to the work that it takes, and that's why I try to speak to it on every single show, that we have to make sure that we keep getting our people engaged in the process. And that engagement comes from bottom up and top down. So hopefully we can find ways to make sure that continues to happen. And it does start with our ability to reach out to our elected officials. So for this moment, I'll leave it there. Let's go take their lunch. I got I was sent a text that I think is really appropriate. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk a little bit about the two leaders of the two houses in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and this upcoming Trump address to the joint sessions of Congress next Tuesday. But here's some math for you guys. 341,999,240 versus 746. The first number is how many people live in the United States, approximately. 746 are how many billionaires we have in the United States. Trump, Musk, and Republicans in both houses of Congress are getting really turned on by hurting those 341 million plus people who depend on big, bad government to give, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse, to get at that waste, fraud, and abuse, and then turn it over to who? The billionaires. Those are the priorities that 78 million versus 75 million Americans fell for because they were afraid of transgender people because they wanted to erase transgender people. Dogs and cats would stop being eaten by Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, and the immigrants will stop taking your jobs. Well, newsflash, America. Trump was right about one thing, and that is an immigrant is taking your jobs. Elon Musk. And with that, we'll go to a break. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views. We'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Shout out to Pam, you guys. Thanks for being with us. 773-763-9278. Pam is plugged in, y'all. She's been calling the family meeting for a long time, and of course calling this show and other shows. She stays plugged in, and it's folks like that we want to make sure that we give them their flowers, as the phrase goes, and makes us think, to be honest with you, about reminding folks of what's happened and happening with voter suppression. And my not pushback on Pam, but my pushback on voter suppression, or my comments around voter suppression, sometimes center on how many people need to be, off the voter rolls that are not African American or other people of color. In other words, there's probably a number of people that should not be on the voter rolls, but that doesn't mean we suppress. I think we give people the opportunity to vote and find ways to help people vote. But we know, going back to the 70s, when some of the hard right, Reagan and Nixon folk were talking about, how do we stop the Negroes from voting? That's not the word he used, a different N word, and it wasn't Nacho. How do we stop them from voting? And we're coming off of the heat of the late 60s, early 70s, Vietnam War, and other incursions and civil rights. All these things were really freaking out Southern whites and really freaking out the parts of the Democratic Party, frankly, that hadn't caught up. So there's a number of reasons reasons is not the word I'm looking for. There's a number of occurrences and points in time when this need for mediocre white guys to inflict voter suppression on us because they feel they're superior when in fact they're not. And anybody that listens to the show knows that I make no statements of bias. I make statements of my experience and those of hundreds of others that I've followed and watched say stupid things over decades. Mediocre folks, mediocre people, that when their mediocrity is recognized, what happens is they try to suppress those who are ascending. And the best two examples in our lifetime for most of us has been the civil rights movement and the women's movement. Civil rights was for everybody. I talked about this last year about having the opportunity to see Maya Angelou speak years ago. It was the late 90s, I believe. I was invited by a friend of mine. It was a women's event. I can't remember the name of it, but it was back in the late 90s. And she spoke at the Hyatt. And the thing that's always stayed with me about this comment that she made, and it ties into what Pam was talking about, is that the ascent of people in America in the last, as she said at that time, I believe she said the last 30 years, was directly tied to the effects of the civil rights movement. And she said there's two effects. The one was the inspiration that it placed in so many people's laps to step up and to step forward and to keep fighting. The other side is that we had a large number of people who were freaked the hell out about what this ascent was going to represent. And that the civil rights movement was a tipping point for all other movements in the country. And if you really speak to someone that knows what they know in any of the other communities that ascended, whether they be white women, whether they be our Latino, Mexican, Hispanic brothers and sisters, whether it be our Jewish community, our Muslim community, our Asian community, the list goes on. The data backs that up. And so the civil rights movement was one of the biggest shifts in policy and in effort that this country has ever seen, because it was all encompassing of all of those groups. It did not say we're just fighting for rights for black folks. It said we're fighting for the rights of all citizens. And you saw the ascent. I mean, we know the data. The largest group of women that have benefited from the civil rights movement and affirmative action and, quote, DEI policies have been white women. That's nothing to run from or to be freaked out by or to be PO'd at me for saying it. I think when you recognize that, it actually empowers you to go, well, hell yeah. So let me do something with that and take that and run with it and make it better for the people that I say I care about. So when Pam said that earlier, it made me think about this. And I'm going on because I think it's important that we understand that there have been movements that have had a double-edged sword. The people who were inspired by those movements and inspired to move forward and to take pride in the fact that there was a movement or a group of people that said it's okay to go out and get that job, woman that's been at home all these years. It's okay to get that education, that woman that's been at home forced to not learn anything. It's okay for that little black boy, that little brown boy, that little Jewish boy, that little Asian boy, and the list goes on, to fight for the people that he believes in or she believes in their community. That's the one side of the civil rights movement that was the inspirational part. The other side was, and then as you move the needle just a little bit, what happened is those who were mediocre were put off and were in a position that they started to realize, not that they didn't realize that a rising ship, they should have realized, let me put it this way, that a rising ship lifts all boats. And it wasn't a zero-sum game that if a person that doesn't look like me gets something, then it's taking away from my accomplishments or my privilege, frankly. Rather than using their privilege to inspire more people to get stronger, better, faster, and raise those ships, they've done things like suppressing the vote, suppressing the ability to go to college, suppressing the ability to drive down the street. And the list goes on and on. So, Pam, thank you for reminding us of that this morning. And I commit to doing a better job in terms of talking more about suppression and the causes of suppression, voter suppression. That's what we got to look at, the causes of it. And the laws that don't allow some people who have been convicted for a felony to vote any longer. In some cases, so you can't have a broad stroke on that, particularly because the numbers of people who've been not rightfully convicted and don't get their convictions overturned then can't vote because the system is built that way. So that's what I want to say on that. Thank you, Pam, for that reminder. Now, kudos as we go to the break to Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Guys, they're not going to get it right. They're not going to say it. Everything that falls out of their mouths is not going to be right all the time. We know that. Our job is to hold them accountable to do better. We could waste a lot of time complaining about what they don't do. And I know I've said my piece about both of them in their leadership roles, but I think a better path is to inspire them, their staff, their people, as we do with all of our leaders, to do a better job of holding these fools to the fire, these craven fools to the fire. That's where we should put our energies. Have them talk about voter suppression. Have them, like Pam said about what Vice President Harris said, the Democratic Party needs to start to say Vice President Harris was right. That's food for the soul. But Schumer and Jeffries have both said that they want to, their choice for Alyssa Slotkin, I was going to get that right, to be the voice following Trump's what will be a mumbling, bumbling rant about people that he doesn't like and kissing Elon's behind in his address next Tuesday. But Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, lifelong public servant, respected national security expert, and distinguished former member of the House Democratic Caucus, she will deliver a comprehensive and clear-eyed response to the joint address and communicate that Democrats are fighting to lower the cost of living and protect Social Security and Medicaid, while Republicans cut taxes for their billionaire donors and Elon Musk. Melissa will deliver a compelling message to the American people. That's what you should watch and tune in for, guys. All right, people. We love you, progressives. We love you, folks. We love you, good citizens. That's what I'll refer to you as. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820 AM, where facts matter. Take it away, Richard.
Back, progressives, and thank you for tuning in this morning. 773-763-9278. All you great progressives that are out there listening to our show, this broadcast, and all the others that are on WCPT. And you're making your way over to where, Henry? Heartlandsignal.com. Why? Because there is great information. I call it stuff just to have some fun, but there's great information there, and I want you guys to plug in and share. Rob Bresnahan breaks pledge and votes to gut Medicaid and SNAP. Punk. I have serious. This is why God is God, and she makes sure that I stay in my lane, because I am that guy. We got a text earlier that said Democrats need a monster that's not afraid of a fight for the people. Somebody that had nothing to lose. I get it. My wife would kill me, though. So anyhow, make your way over to heartlandsignal.x. We got a busy schedule this morning. There's great clips that are there that you guys can pass on. Let's see. Senator Amy Klobuchar talks about the pushback Senator John Kennedy after he claims Democrats are trying to undermine Supreme Court's legitimacy. Legitimacy to me is upholding the laws, making it clear you're going to follow court orders. That's coming from our wonderful Senator Amy Klobuchar. So she definitely is leaning in there. And many others. So make your way over to Heartland Signal X, and you will find stuff to share. All right. We will say this again. One of the best things about our show is we have some wonderful, wonderful guests. This morning, of course, it's Friday, and we have our good friend Karen Byrne from True Blue Politics Podcast hanging with me here in studio. Good morning, Karen.
Hello, good morning. I'm just sitting here watching how the sausage is made, and
sometimes it's pretty, and sometimes it's like,
it can get messy up in here.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Glad you're in this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we also have the blessing, I'll call it, of having one of our state representatives with us here in Illinois. For those of you who don't know, we do have lots of great state representatives, even though you might be in another state. Illinois is a good state to model yourselves after. If you're in a red state and you're a blue, progressive, liberal Democrat and you want to see how things get done, talking about how the sausage is made. But with us this morning is Representative Cam Buckner, Democrat from the 26th District, also the Assistant Majority Leader. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you with us this morning. And I will dive right into, as I say, the deep end of the pool. You have been a busy, busy representative. And I think the people in the state of Illinois, and specifically in your district, are proud as heck that you are leading in the way in which you have. So I first want to come out of the gate and say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment. I know that on Monday we were going to have you on, and you got pulled into a meeting with Mayor Johnson. So, or was it Mayor Johnson or Governor Pritzker? Let me get that right.
Mayor, yeah, Mayor Johnson.
And how did things go with that meeting and other meetings that I know in the broad sense you're a part of right now, because you guys have so much work on a state level that you're doing. Talk a little bit about some of your key assignments, some of your key work that you are involved in right now.
Yeah, well, Richard, there is no shortage of work, right? Illinois has some big obstacles, some big challenges, but we also have some really large opportunities as well to not just lead the charge here in the state for the people, 12.5 million Illinoisans and the folks who live in Chicago and in my district, but for the country. I think the country is looking at Illinois, as you said earlier, as a model on how to get it right, on what state government can do in very tumultuous times, how we respond and react and protect based on what may be happening in Washington, both in the White House and in Congress, right? And so, when we talk about ensuring that we have a real plan when it comes to making sure our schools are fully funded, making sure that we are doing the right things on climate justice, making sure that we understand that criminal legal reform is not just based on cops and law enforcement, but it's doing the right things when it comes to schools and housing and the things that people need to survive and to not be involved in crime and violence, right? And so for us, that is a huge task, but it's an important one, and I really do believe that Illinois has the opportunity to lead the way for these next 4 years and into the future.
So 2 things about the next 4 years. I know that I say this on our show, Representative, pretty much every day. The fight starts right now. It's every morning when we wake up and put our feet on the floor, those of us who are in the fight, and we all are. Before you came on, we had a caller that asked a question about something that I wasn't expecting to ask you, so I'm not trying to blindside you. I just have to ask it because it's one that I know you have put a lot of work into, and that's what she asked about is this. Richard, what are we going to do about voter suppression in America? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that because you are one of the leaders. You're the assistant majority leader here in Illinois. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about what we need to do when it comes to voter suppression, because it's a real thing.
Voter suppression is a big deal, and unfortunately, we've not paid much attention to it. Right, it's been a trickle, right, and that trickle now has turned into this large lake of pushback against democratic principles and ideals. We've got to find a way to hold state governments, county governments, municipal governments, all the folks who are a part of the voter or the election function. We got to call them to task and make sure that we're doing the right thing in those spaces. In Illinois, we've been okay. We've been doing the right things, and we've been strong, but we can even strengthen our work a little bit more. When we talk about giving people the right to do what they are supposed to do, vote, right? Way too often we just take that for granted as if it's a foregone conclusion. But when you look at states around this country, when you look at many of the swing districts around this country, you look at the electoral map, we know where voter rolls were purged, and we know what the results were. In fact, even here in Illinois, if you take a look at the Illinois legislative website, you'll see that there are a number of voter purge and voter suppression bills currently being filed in Springfield by many of my Republican colleagues, many of whom live south of Interstate 80, right? And so this is not something that's theoretical. It's a big deal. And so for us, we got to double down on this. And we got to find a way to make sure that we're singing out of the same hymn book with folks around the country to make sure that folks have this right and they're not being disenfranchised and that we're pushing back when these bills come up. But I also will say, Richard, is that I've been warning people in this Trump administration that there are 2 different functions of Trump's government, right? One is thunder, one is lightning. Thunder is very loud, it's clamorous, however, it is not that dangerous. No one's ever died from thunder. Lightning will kill you. But so often, thunder takes all the air out of the room because you're concerned with that sound and you're missing what's going on. We cannot miss the lightning that is voter suppression. It's happening right in front of our eyes, and it's trying to change the complexion and the landscape of our electorate nationally. We got to push back.
Thunder and lightning. I haven't heard it put that way, not just in the conversation around voter suppression, but so many other things that are happening. It's maybe the phrase that I use is watch the hand, the shining object, one hand over here. Meanwhile, they're snatching stuff from your pockets. It's your version. Thunder and lightning is your version of this is loud and boisterous. And people pay attention to that because it's loud and boisterous. But the other thing that you don't see is how the lightning is as you put it, could kill you. And that's so well put. You mentioned something that I want to come back to, upstate, downstate, in terms of voter suppression here in Illinois. What's that been looking like? Republicans, you said, south of Route 80, did you say, are leaning into legislation for voter suppression or just tools that they find in their toolkit?
Yeah, they've been filing legislation for the last couple of years that would purge voter rolls and suppress the right to vote for many people around this state. There are massive voter ID laws and things of that sort that have been filed in Illinois. Now, one of the things that we have working in our favor is that we have a supermajority, both in the House and the Senate. We've got strong leaders in Speaker Welch and President Harmon who are pushing back on that. And so those type of bills don't have much opportunity in our legislature. However, I just use those points to remind people that we are not that far out of the woods here in Illinois. And the Bruce Rauner days were not a decade, 2 or 3 decades ago. They were just, in our recent memory. And so when we talk about being diligent and being vigilant and making sure that we're staying the course, we cannot just feel like we've got it all together here because we're in good old blue Illinois. It's not as blue as you think.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns that a lot of people are saying we as Democrats have to talk more about because of the fact that we aren't that far away from the Rauner years. So to that end, we had a guest on yesterday. His name is Brian Lamech with Defend the Vote. And he talked about the suppression and how it is it's sneaky in some ways. Sometimes it is the thunder, and sometimes it's the lightning. It's very sneaky because it's happening in areas where people think it's not happening, i.e. the state of Illinois. We also talked about the SAVE Act. So if you could lean in a little bit on your thoughts, your observations, maybe what you guys are doing to try to push back on the deadliness of the SAVE Act.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to agree with the earlier note that you made just about the fact that restrictive voter ID laws and some of this disproportionate effects that we've seen in states like Illinois, we just got to keep paying attention to it. But as far as the SAVE Act is concerned, obviously the primary objective of this is to suppress the right to vote nationally. And when you look at the climate that we're in right now, they're really politicizing this processes in a way that it's going to purge millions of folks off the road. It's going to make many of us disenfranchised in this space. I want to thank the congressional folks, especially the Illinois delegation folks like Senator Durbin, who have pushed back and given significant opposition in this space. The League of Women Voters have been huge on this. But these measures will disproportionately affect communities of color. We know they're going to disproportionately affect low-income folks and other marginalized groups. So this is a throwback to a bygone era, which we cannot retreat to. When Trump talks about making America great again, that again that we've always pushed back on, what Congressman Roy is trying to do in Texas is a perfect example of what that retreating backwards is, and we can't stand for it.
Well, it's an example, and I called it what I think it is, and that's a poll tax, and like counting marbles or jelly beans in a jar. That's just what it is, and I'm hoping that there's a national or federally elected House of Representatives member or Senate member that will call it that during a press conference, so that people who are not paying attention, that are not the Cam Buckners of the world, will just call it as it is. It is a poll tax, and listen, I'm sometimes a very literal and visual person. Have a big old jar of jelly beans sitting on the dais, or sitting on the lectern, or whatever the thing is called, when they're talking about it, so people can go, oh yeah, I've been alive long enough to remember that. So yeah. I appreciate you breaking that down in terms of what the SAVE Act is really trying to do. I have another question for you regarding the work that you do as an assistant majority leader. What does that encompass? I mean, that's a big A job. Excuse my language, but it just is.
Well, I was assistant majority leader in the last General Assembly. I had the pleasure and privilege in this General Assembly of being elevated to Speaker Pro Tem and Chief Budgeteer, which I really thank Speaker Welch for his faith in me. But as Speaker Pro Tem and a member of the leadership team for the Speaker, a lot of what I do is try to manage the issues within our own membership. We have 78 Democrats in the Illinois House. That is a super duper majority, we like to call it. And folks come from all over. We've got progressives from the city of Chicago. We've got moderates from DuPage County and the collar counties. We've got conservative Democrats from downstate and places like the Metro East near the St. Louis border, right? And so when you've got a big tent like that, you've got a lot of different personalities, a lot of different issues, a lot of different things that are a part of the conversation. And so a lot of the work that I do and to help the Speaker with is to kind of bring us together, keep us coalesced as a large party, as a large tent, as a large caucus, right? And I also have the honor of working as a negotiator on the state budget for the 12.5 million people who live in this state. As you know, a budget is a big piece of what state government does. And as I was telling someone yesterday, the thing about state budgets in Illinois, they're often like Chicago deep dish pizza, right? It's layered, it's ambitious, and depending on who you ask, it's either brilliant or way too much to digest. And so that is probably where I spend my most time. The majority of my time is trying to work with folks around the state to make sure that we have a budget that's balanced. And when I say balanced, it's not just fiscally, but a budget that's balanced morally.
And particularly to the communities that fit into that moral part of the conversation. To your point about diversity and big tent of Democrats, we have State Representative Harry Benton will be with us in the 7:30 hour. And you guys all have to work together. And I love what you said about making sure that as Speaker Pro Tem, that folks are lining up and doing what they got to do, because I've said for a long time, and many progressives have said, and my good colleague Karen Byrne, who's here with us in studio, have said, one of the biggest challenges that you guys face in those leadership roles is getting everybody to line up and stay in line. And the energy and the power of that mass being in line is when you get stuff done. So kudos to you for having that role, but you're a big boy, so no disrespect. But you know, when you step to the mic, they got to pay attention.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not easy, but it's necessary work, and I do appreciate my colleagues for their willingness to be a part of this big tent.
Yeah, I have to ask you this question regarding the supermajority. How do we keep those numbers? How do we keep it super? Because it's effective, I believe. It's not perfect, but it's been effective. Yeah. What do you see is the message or the way forward to make sure we're keeping the supermajority? And layered into that question, is a second part. What do you have as suggestions to Democrats, and I say this respectfully, to your relationships that are in other states that are fighting to keep their majority or even swing the balance to a majority? So two-part question. How do we keep it here, and what are you doing to work with your colleagues in other states to help them out?
I think there are a few things. I think we have to remain very consistent with our true north, right? Who we are as a party, and why the work that we do and the issues that we care about are important to the people of Illinois. I always remind our members that we've got to do three things. We got to be inspirational, we got to be aspirational, but most importantly, we've got to be operational. We got to show people that all of this stuff works, right? And so we continue to churn out good policy and to be able to show results. It helps people when they're knocking doors and walking in their community to talk to folks, right? So I think that's number one. Number two, we've got to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in this state. We got to hear people and hear what's important to them. As I travel my district from South Shore up to Streeterville, everyone is really saying one thing, and they care about rising costs and they care about raising kids. Can we make both of those things easier for them? And I think that we have tried to find ways to do that, and we should do more and continue to push on that. When you talk about someone like Representative Harry Benton, whose district is one that could very easily be Republican if we didn't do the right things and that they don't have the right rep there, and he's doing a great job. When you talk to the people in his district in Aurora and Bolingbrook and Naperville and Oswego and Plainfield, they just want to know that there's a plan. There's a plan forward, right? And so we've got to be bold. We can't be scared. Donald Trump is not the boogeyman, right? We're going to fight him. We're going to fight him, and the things that we do here are not going to be because of him. It's going to be in spite of him. And when he's gone, we'll still be doing the good work here in Illinois. And so we've got to show people that there's a plan moving forward. And to folks around the country, Richard, I've got the great honor of having a lot of very close friends in legislatures around the country. I spent some time working in the state of Louisiana some years ago, and I've got a lot of friends in Baton Rouge and Madison, Wisconsin, and Tallahassee, Florida, and we talk a lot, especially during these uncertain times around President Trump. And what I'm reminding all of them is that they've got to stay the course. And one of the greatest things about our democracy is the power of federalism. Because the federal government is going to be chaotic, it is doubly time for state legislatures to do the work that we're supposed to do. We are the laboratories for democracy. We are the voice of the people. We are the tip of the spear. And they've got to take that job very seriously.
That is so profound and so right on. I appreciate you breaking it down. And the reason I asked the question about other areas is that a lot of times, you know, when we're in a largely blue state where we do have these, quote, supermajorities and a mindset that supports that because we do get things done, there are folks in other parts of the country, and you know this from your work, I know it from just my experience and paying attention, that are in a further, their tip of the scale is a little bit tougher than ours. So I appreciate that you are using your experience and your concern and desire to help folks in other areas. You've always got something going on in your district. You've always got an event. You've always got things happening. What's going on this spring? We're about to end the month of February, going into March, changing weather here in the Chicago area and the upper Midwest. What are some of the things that you and your team are going to be looking to do in these next, 3 to 6 months?
Well, in the district, as far as community and constituent services stuff, we'll have a lot of events coming up, including street events and some ID events. As we know, the Real ID deadline is coming up for Illinois residents, and so that's coming up in May. And so if you don't have a Real ID, it's going to become very difficult for you to travel. Our office will work with Secretary of State Jim Lee's office on that to make sure that folks are getting that. And we remind folks all the time, even if you don't live in our district, you're still our people. And so if you need to reach out to us for anything, let us know if there's help with things that may be going on with seniors or children or anything that is of import. Our office is here to be helpful.
So 2 things. One is, can we have you back on in maybe a month or so to talk about Real ID? A lot of people, there's a couple things that are going on, 3 things that are going on. Some people just don't even know. Some people that do know are freaked out, like, now what the hell do I do? Excuse my language. And then there's a group that are saying it's not real. So in denial to that. So I'd love to have you back on in a few weeks to talk about that as a tool to help people know how to navigate this process. And if you'd be open to that, we'll set it up so that we can have you back on to talk about. Would that be okay?
That would be absolutely great. We'll do it.
Okay. Now, last, as we wrap up, tell folks how they can find you, how folks can get involved. They may be in another district, but who cares? At this point, we have to use all of our tools, and all of our players means all of our players. How can folks follow you? How can they get behind what you're doing?
Yeah, they can find us on all things social media, Rep, R-E-P, Cam, K-A-M, Buckner, B-U-C-K-N-E-R. Our district website is Illinois26.com. And I totally agree with you, Richard. Listen, the issues that we face today are no respecter of geographical or political lines. It is a real fight, and we got to be in it. And so everybody that wants to get their hands dirty and roll up their sleeves, let's get to work.
There it is. We'll leave it there. Representative Cam Buckner, the 26th District, one of our real fighters, y'all, one of our real fighters. And he's a big boy, so don't mess around. Thanks, Representative, for being with us. And I left you with a smile on your face, so that's a good thing.
I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
We will. You be safe. Thank you. That's leadership, y'all. Plain and simple. We can call it all we want to. That is leadership. He is leaned. I love what he said, a phrase that I use. Sleeves rolled up, Henry, and elbows deep.
Yeah.
That's what it takes, y'all. That's the kind of leadership that we have to have across the board. He's not afraid to talk to people in different districts. He's not afraid to talk about voter suppression. He knows the ins and outs of the SAVE Act and the impact it will have. He knows what our biggest challenges are upstate and downstate. And he has created alliances to help him in the efforts that are important. That is leadership. So we have to get behind the representatives like Cam Buckner to make sure, as I've said so many times because I'm passionate about this, they shouldn't have to turn around to know if they have people behind them. Those people would be us. We, Karen, have to. We have to be there so that they know that they have to know that we're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We then know that they're there. It's a back and forth. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, for years and years now, I've been telling people, because I'll get in. I'm a big mouth. I don't know if you know that about me.
I heard. I don't know.
And I get into some pretty heated conversations with some people and challenge some people. And I can't tell you how many times I would have conversations with people that would say, that they're angry with this person or that person. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, have you reached out to them to let them know? Have they done anything right? Have you reached out to them to let them know?
Yeah.
What do you do in between elections to engage?
Right. It's an ongoing. This is the thing, Karen, and I know you understand this because you speak to this often on your podcast as well as on your socials. We don't have the luxury any longer.
Nope.
It's a day-to-day fight. It's like, look at this process. Excuse me. Look at this process progresses like this. If you go too long without drinking water, you're going to become dehydrated. We'll just keep it that simple. We all have to do that. If you go too long without getting sleep, something's going to happen. Our politics right now are the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been saying it all along. It's like, if you don't do politics, it's going to do you. And, when politics and politicians can affect you personally, and we're already seeing how
personally
politicians are affecting people in a very real way. And, yeah, I mean, we have got to be engaged. We have got to make it. Maybe this is what's waking people up.
I said this last Saturday at the event up in McHenry, that I was talking to I forgot now, but the sad thing about this, where we are in terms of Trump and Republicanisms or the Republican followers, is that this craziness has hopefully got a few people to wake up. Yeah. Maybe more than a few people
and like you mentioned earlier at these town halls, I'm seeing majority that they're showing right now, majority white people in red districts that are out there, and they are angry and they are scared, and they're talking about their developmentally delayed children that are going to lose their Medicaid. They're talking about, their grandma that's going to lose her Medicare.
Right.
So this is where we're at. And
that's why I say that Ken Martin, in my opinion, if I were in his ear, I'd say, listen, here's what you should do, I believe. And that is, if there's a neighboring district, so a red district, and we got to go to break. Red district, call it 1, and blue district 2. The person in the blue district should find allies in the red district and go have a town hall in the red district's backyard.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Right in their backyard. Because if you got those people who are upset, let's plug them in and get them excited. Karen, we're going to go to this break.
All right.
Henry, 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, guys, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Welcome back, Choose Views listeners, progressives, and all the rest of you fun, cool people out there that are posting and texting and emailing and staying in the fight and pushing us to do a better job. I appreciate that from all of you. I made a commitment to you last year and again this year that I'm going to do my dead level best to bring you the best that I've got every single day. So I appreciate your comments. That being said, we have been, like I said earlier, blessed with the opportunity to have such great state representatives here in Illinois that are fighting the fight. And you just heard from Representative Cam Buckner, who is, I say that affectionately when I refer to him as a big boy. He's a big man. He is, literally, and he's doing big work. So no disrespect, and at least I made him chuckle. But we also have another big fighter in our effort here in Illinois, and that is none other than State Representative Harry Benton from Plainfield. He's out there running it in the western suburbs. Good morning, Representative, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. And as somebody who works with Cam is a big boy doing big work.
Thank you, Representative Benton. I was like, wait a minute, I can't be calling a grown man a boy. And so I know that there's a little bit of jostling and fun in that. However, I appreciate the fact that you kind of helped me clean that up on aisle 7. Representative, thank you for being with us this morning, and kudos to the number of bills just this year alone that you have put out there, and you are doing big work as well. You're out in Plainfield and your district fighting the good fight, just like Representative Buckner have been doing. So my questions are really centered around what are some of your biggest headaches right now? What are the things that just, frankly tick you off about not getting done, not getting leaned into, not getting talked about, Representative Benton? What are those items?
I mean, there are some things that I've been ticked about that haven't been talked about that are starting to be talked about now. I'm a union guy, and my union brothers and sisters are out there fighting to make sure that they're getting collective bargaining agreements. They're making work better for people. And I want to do a shout out, too, from one of my constituents in Plainfield. JJ with the bricklayers is out there on a picket line in Elk Grove Village fighting to make sure that people have better conditions and better wages. So shout out to the bricklayers and JJ. But we have to start fighting to make sure that we're getting our fair share. We have an administration at the top that's trying to cut Medicaid, trying to cut educational funding, trying to cut the Social Security. All he's trying to do is pull back the money that we're already underfunded. We're a payer state.
Yeah.
We're lucky if we get about 81 cents back on the dollar. So it's going to be even harder with trying to get money out to the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
Another.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No. You said another. You got it.
Yes. One of the other issues that I think is one of the top. There's two major issues that we need to be talking about more, and that's early childhood, early intervention, and child care. We need providers. We need people that are going through the programs and getting out there, and we need to expand the ECAS grant for early childhood to get these new educators out. Anybody that has kids in child care right now knows, and I have two of them, that it is a second mortgage for child care. And we don't have access. It's expensive, and we need good quality programs. But we need access for so many more people. And the other thing is we need to have some serious energy conversations.
Yes. So, all right. One of the things, and I want to circle back to something that you said earlier about quality health care and making sure that that's a big part of your legislative agenda, is making sure that our citizens, irrespective of their political stripe, irrespective of that, I don't want to see a person sick and not having access that's a stern Republican any more than I want to see that for any of my Democratic colleagues, friends, and family. And I know you take the same position on why that's important to this state and for the state's safety to have health care, not just on a state level, but on a federal level that works for everybody.
Yeah, and the ones that are the most vulnerable, we send so much money in support to the southern region of Illinois, who are typically a little bit more Republican-leaning, or the Eastern Bloc, the people that vote for Mary Miller and Chris Miller. They're struggling. They need help with their costs. I got elected as a Democrat, but I don't care who you are. I want to make sure that your prescription drugs are affordable and you're not rationing your insulin to put food on the table, or you're not going without a meal so you can buy your insulin or whatever prescription drug that is. Trying to work with insurance companies to drive down some of those costs for consumers. That's one of the reasons why I hopped on the insurance committee, and I'm also the vice chair of prescription drug affordability. I sit on labor. I sit on public utilities because the energy space, that's another thing. We're trying to make it affordable for consumers with these crazy energy demands, with more and more data centers coming up, with more and more electric vehicles. We need to start having some real conversations because we're on track in the PJM region, which is this northern region, on being an energy importer when we've always been an energy exporter.
Gosh, that's got to drive you nuts because of the fact that we have such an opportunity to stand tall in that space of being an exporter. One of the things I wanted to circle back to, and I want to give a couple of quick shout-outs to colleagues of yours indirectly, and that would be Cook County Commissioner Preckwinkle. She talked in depth, and we had her on a couple weeks ago, about the importance of Illinois maintaining its prowess in the energy space. And another person I want to give a shout-out again, another one of your peripheral colleagues, is Comptroller Mendoza. She talked about how important it is that people understand how much money we, as the state of Illinois, send to other states, or not other states, but in terms of the dollar exchange with regard to our federal contributions in terms of what we get versus what we get back. So shout out to both of them, because I know that you probably had conversations with them both directly and indirectly about the importance of our sustainability in those two areas.
Yeah. When it drives me nuts when Republicans from other states talk about Illinois balancing a budget, or Illinois with pension deficits, or any of that. Well, that's real easy when you're getting $1 for dollar back, or you're getting $1.15 for every dollar back, and we're getting 81 cents. It's a lot easier to balance your budget when you don't have somebody in your back pocket taking money out because they don't know how to run their state the right way. I don't want like making it a Democrat or a Republican thing, but I truly believe that Republicans will tell you one thing and do another, and Democrats will just get to work.
Yeah, and that's listen, one of the things, Representative Benton, that I have so been so impressed by what you guys are doing is you are not yielding here in Illinois space. And it starts at the top. Governor Pritzker, and I'm of this mindset, Representative Benton, y'all don't have to get along on everything. It's just not going to happen. I look at a family. You know, if you be Representative of Buckner and 5 other folks are brothers and sisters, we ain't going to get along all the time. We aren't going to agree on everything that comes our way because we're all built similarly, but a little bit differently. But I love the fact that Governor Pritzker has set a tone for the state that says that Illinois is going to fight this federal carnage from the 34 times convicted felon and all of his minion with tooth and nail. And you and Representative Buckner and so many others are unyielding in that space. And I have to say that because it's what I believe in. And at the same time, I'm encouraging so many people to get involved to help you. So what are some of the things that you take from the governor's leadership when it comes to don't mess with Illinois?
Well, listen, I'm a union iron worker, and we don't take much crap from anyone. We just don't. And
you like how I set that up, right?
Yeah, it's just who I am. Listen, not everybody's going to love me down in Springfield. All right, I'm okay with that because I'm fighting for my district and I'm fighting for the state. Not everybody's going to love me in the federal government. That's fine. I'm fighting for my district. I'm fighting for the state. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to put personal feelings aside because, you know, we always say in construction, leave your feelings in the truck. We got a job to do.
Right on,
and that's the truth. But when
leave
we
your
have
ego
to fight
in the
back.
trunk of the car.
Yeah. We got to fight back. We've got a current administration. There's a Republican representative, congressman, that filed to repeal OSHA.
Yeah.
The same thing, that a top 5 most dangerous job. They used to bid for lives being lost every other floor, every 5 floors. We're going to the point where we're not seeing the deaths on the job anymore. We got an administration that previously rolled back regulations on asbestos. Mm. I mean, it's clear cut that this is pro-corporation, pro-business. They're trying to go after – Rand Paul is going to file another, if he hasn't already filed it, to do a national right to work.
Yeah.
Right to work for less. And I saw the tax plan. So everybody under $360,000 is going to pay more in taxes while the top are paying less. I remember not that long ago, we had some Democratic candidates saying that anybody over $400,000 is going to pay their fair share, and we're going to help out working people.
Right.
We're the economic driver, the middle class. We spend more in the economic consumer space than they do.
Yeah.
We should be supporting our small businesses by supporting our middle class folks. We need a break. And I remember I just paid over $3 a gallon for gas, and eggs aren't that much cheaper. I thought he was going to do that on day one.
Oh, boy. Here we go. My man, Representative Harry Benton, speaking from your soul about the truth of what people fell for the okie doke. Or did they fall for the okie doke, Representative? Did people they were so against, in your opinion, and again, I'm putting you on the spot, not in a harsh way, did people get bamboozled? Or were people just, I don't want to see a woman of color in the White House? I mean, tell me what your observation is as best you can. And I know you have to be careful in how you state that.
I don't have to be careful. I'm one of those people that I promise you, I'm always going to do the best. I told my wife, if you ever see me change, I'm out. I'm here to fight for people, and I'm here to give it. I'm honest to a fault. I'm just old, humble Harry from the house. And I'll tell you, people were okie doke. Mm-hmm. This is a known con man that played the con, and he played it with the richest person in the world. And he's out there right now, gutting the FAA and getting startling contracts. He's gutting these agencies for privatization. He is destroying, along with DeJoy, the Postal Service that we rely on. He is cutting jobs. He is the number one job cutter, not creator.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He is hurting working people. And I don't blame people for falling for it because you know what? We were terrible at our messaging. We were absolutely horrendous at our messaging. We need to go back to what we stand for as Democrats, and that's economic messaging. We need to fight for unions. We need to fight for accessible, affordable, or free health care. Mm-hmm. We need to fight for affordable and accessible housing. There's so much more.
And that's why we're going to have you back. And that's what we're going to have you back, because we know there's so much more. Tuition's a big one. I mean, across the board. And here's where I push all Democratic elected officials on a state level and a national level that, you know, a lot of people were bamboozled, but I also have observed from research and data that a lot of people, this is what they wanted, because along with our messaging maybe having been better, our ideas weren't bad. Our ideas have always been great, and we have to be willing to push harder. But at the same time, I do find, Representative, that there are a lot of people that, setting messaging aside for a second, just could not get past the idea that we could put a woman of color in the White House. And I know that part of the bamboozling was to push that narrative.
I think part of that, yes, you're right. I looked at the results, even in Will County, which is a majority of my district is Will County, and I also have part of Kendall County. But we saw that women of color did poorly on the ballot because it mirrored the results of Kamala Harris. But I also have, this is a crazy thing. All of my friends that are union white males that were Bernie bros voted for Trump because they just felt like we didn't have a real election. We just had the next person that was put in. We didn't have a primary. And they said it felt like Bernie all over again. So if we're losing Bernie bros to Donald Trump, who I think is the complete opposite, what are we doing? And again, it really, truly does go back to messaging, because we can't message our wins. Build Back Better, Inflation Reduction Act. We're getting money out. We're working on infrastructure that we haven't touched since 1935.
Yeah,
we are trying to drive down inflation.
A lot of that's coming from the fact that you're getting such opposition from the right, and candidly, the messaging is oftentimes controlled by a media, has been, and that's evidence that has not still talked about the fact that the Republicans don't have any solutions. They have sound bites, they have flames to throw, but for the union, your union brothers and my union brothers, the message was there. It's just that the message wasn't positioned in the right way. And that's where I think a lot of people kind of part in terms of the conversation about it. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I think that people have to take from what you're saying is you guys here in Illinois are fighting extraordinarily hard, whether it be you or Representative Cam Buckner and all the rest, to make sure that the state is, and I like the way you put this, I don't care what they say about me in Washington. What I care about is my district and my state. And that's, we need to hear more of that from our locally elected officials so that people know, back to your point about messaging, that Dems are fighting daily and they are, sleeves rolled up and elbows deep in this fight. So that's, that has to be repeated in terms of what you said earlier.
Hey, if we're rolling up our sleeves and we're throwing on the gloves, I really want Cam Buckner in my corner.
Yeah.
That's right. Well,
he's the guy you want to take in a fight.
Yeah, I hear you. Representative Harry Benton, we so appreciate you being with us, and we know that you are in the fight. We appreciate what you're doing, and I want to ask you to let folks know how they can follow you, how they can find you, and how they can get involved in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, all over social media, you can find me. It's not hard. Go to Google. You can go to my website, representativeharrybenton.com. You can reach out to me at info@repharrybenton.com. My phone number, real easy to remember, 815-254-0000. Call anytime.
Absolutely.
We're all in this together, and the best thing that anybody can do, be a champion of your cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Be a champion of your block. Go out, talk to your neighbors. So many people don't want to talk about politics and tell their friends, their family, their neighbors how they feel. Tell them how you feel. Tell them how it's affecting your life, because people need to know what's going on. If you're struggling with the cost of living, or you're struggling with the cost of your medications or tuition, anything, if it directly affects you and your friend doesn't know about it and they vote against you all the time, you need to have that conversation. Yeah. And that's how we can truly change the narrative.
That is a brilliant, brilliant closing to today's show. And I want you're going to be back. I won't even ask you, like I said to Representative Buck, you're going to be back, because I want to talk some more about some of the things that you were leaning into. Our listeners across the country need to hear it from a good old state of Illinois and Representative Harry Benton. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
You too.
Bye now. Bye. So, listen, big conversation. But he
okay. Do I have time to just say something real quick? I promise it'll be quick. Okay. Number one. And I really appreciate him, because he is on it as far as like the Department of Education and the effect that it's going to have on families and children across the country. But point of order, as far as the messaging issue, Bernie was openly involved with Biden, who passed some of the most progressive policies, including some of the items that Rep. Benton had mentioned that his Bernie bro union buddies wanted. I watched that DNC. It was freedom. It was $25,000 for first-time home buyers. It was $50,000 for startup businesses. The problem that we had was the media going after Biden, treating him exponentially more critically and worse, and just horribly, never touching the stuff, the cognitive decline, the stuff that was going on with Trump. Okay. Number one, that's the media. Number two, it was the media, misogyny, and racism that did not allow those Bernie bro buddies to not vote for her.
Well, and the other
part...
Sorry. No.
I'm going to keep it real.
You guys, Karen was chomping...
I'm going to keep it real.
Karen was chomping at the bit when we had Representative Benton on, and I was trying to navigate, knowing that she was going to have some great comments.
I agree with it. I mean, we're on the same team.
No.
Don't get me wrong.
No, that's not even a concern.
I take an issue with that, for sure.
And many people, I mean, listen, the text board lit up. So that's why I said the biggest issue that was faced was that those messages were out there, but the mainstream media had nothing. They didn't want to have anything to do with it.
That's right.
They did, and that was clear. That was obvious. And it also points out something that is what I will say here that a lot of people can't get to, no matter where they are politically, whether they're an elected official or not, is to acknowledge the fact that, and he said it, that some of the white male members of his union groups were not willing, that they couldn't get past. He said it indirectly, because I know he wasn't trying to throw anybody under the bus, that they couldn't get past the part of the question that I asked, which was that, was it this or was it that? And the bamboozling definitely, or the okie doke definitely. But underneath all that was the message from the mainstream media that we need to talk less about the successes of the Biden administration, which I highlighted, and more about the negative side, or the side that, or the messaging, I should say, that wouldn't appeal to those same Bernie bro union men, which ironically goes back to the other greater point. It was white men. And this is going to sound...
And white women.
This is going to sound... I was going to say, this is going to sound, not meant to sound sexist, but a lot of white women who couldn't see past what their white male counterparts were telling them.
That's right. And
that's I'm not just saying that. I mean, Karen, you can take the baton on that.
Oh, well, that goes back. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying. They vote by proxy. But, too, I want to say in this last election, and I don't know whose idea it was to put these ballot initiatives on abortion in these southern states where Roe had been overturned. I think it was a bad decision. If it was Republicans, I think it was a great decision.
Yeah.
But if it was any Democrats doing that, because what that allowed was cover for those white women down there.
Right,
to vote
to
for
be able to
Trump.
vote for this, but not vote for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was one of the sort of early things that came out right after the election, weeks following, the days following.
Yeah.
How could you vote for this and then not vote for that?
It gave them cover,
It gave them cover. It really gave them. That's a great way of putting it. And listen, to those of you who are texting, I can't get to all of them, but yes, this is a consistent comment. Sorry, but Bernie bros were hostile to black women.
That's right.
That's fairly true. And unfortunately, that never got resolved.
Mm-hmm.
He was not just hostile to black women. He was in some ways hostile to women in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest about that. I can touch on that quickly. I know that we couldn't squeeze all that in with Representative Benton. But listen, guys, it is, as Karen put it, how the sausage is made, not just with this show, but with this conversation in general, politically. We had two sausage makers on today, Representative Buckner and Benton. And their approaches are similar in some ways, but this is the question, and I wouldn't put either of them on the spot because we don't have the time to debate it out. But I would love to put them both on the conversation question. Representative Buckner, Representative Benton. Mm-hmm. In this last election, what was the reason or reasons? Couple reasons. If you were to pick two reasons why this turned out the way that it did, what would they be? I would love to, at the same time, and maybe we'll be able to do that. Maybe that's how I'll position it for the next time I have them on, is to ask that question from their perspective and see what we get.
Right.
So, Karen, it's been great having you in studio this morning. I know that we had our two call-in guests. So
I love it. Like I said, I just love being here. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I love seeing you guys in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
And the same goes back at you. Listen, guys, it's the weekend. Make sure that when you're out and about, you're safe, you're having fun, you're engaging with people. And like he said, meaning Benton, talk to people. That's one of the powers that you have. That's one of the ways that you can message is to talk to people.
And don't spend money today.
Don't spend money today. You get in trouble. All right, guys. As always, take a deep breath. Make your life count. We'll see you next week.